Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you this evening for our Careers, Life in Yale webinar, featuring the wonderful Dorian Webb, who is class of 91. My name is Rami Christ. At Yale, I was Rami Roseman. I'm also a member of the class of 91. I'm based in New York here, and I'm a member of the Yale Board of Governors, and we have the fun and exciting activity of finding amazing Yaleys, of which there are many all over the world, and asking them to share their talent. So tonight, I'm really excited to have Dorian here. And right before I give a brief intro, I just have to do a little plug for the Yale Alumni Association's cross-campus platform. So I don't know if you all have heard about that, but it's, as one person put it, is sort of like the child of LinkedIn plus Facebook. So it's like a friendlier, happier LinkedIn where you can network, but it's also meant for socialization and so forth. And it's a great way just to connect with people you knew at school, meet new people, find business partners, find tennis partners, whatever you like. So just wanted to put a plug in for that. And then actually coming out in May, the cross-campus platform is going to have an alumni to alumni mentoring opportunity, which will be really exciting. So more about that. So anyway, with no further ado, I wanted to introduce Dorian. Dorian is class of 91. She's originally from New Jersey and is now a longtime Oakland native. And I remember Dorian from our time at school. We were not in the same major or the same college, but I remember seeing this tall, elegant woman striding across campus, always dressed immaculately. She had an amazing sense of style even then, and you will see that her amazing sense of style has grown into a really terrific design business. And she's going to tell you so much more because it's so much more than just a profession. And I am a big fan. I'm wearing some Dorian pieces. She's going to talk more about coral, but I have to show this one because this one is very unique. And I'm just really excited that she's going to share her journey with you and talk about her design ethos and what's coming next. So without further ado, let me introduce Dorian.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rami, for that great introduction, and also for the Yale Alumni Association for having me here. I'm just really excited to be here because my time at Yale studying architecture was really the foundation of my career. And let's see. Oh, okay. Thank you, Rami. And actually, if you could go to the next slide is good. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the time at Yale really was formative for me in terms of my career and the journey that I took. A lot of people think that it's a little bit of are confused by going from architecture to jewelry. And it's interesting in that architecture, I think, is a field that is so wonderful to use as a stepping stone for other creative fields, because it really teaches you, and particularly in the Yale in the way that it's taught at Yale, it really teaches you how to think proportional in terms of proportion, in terms of space, how things relate to one another. And Yale's program is particularly experiential in that it really focuses on how things make you feel, how spaces make you feel, how colors make you feel, how the introduction of light also makes you, transforms you and the space itself. And a lot of fashion designers studied architecture. All of the large Italian designers like Versace and Armani and Gianfranco Ferre studied architecture, as well as, even Coco Chanel, who famously said that fashion is architecture and it's just all about proportions. So again, I just feel really fortunate to be able to have studied at Yale's program, where the focus was really about the connection between you and the structure and your community, and just building that connection. So could you advance the next slide? Thanks. So chief among the experiences at Yale that were so influential to me was the time that I spent in Italy. And there I really was able to see not only um, in Venice, where I spent a lot of time, but throughout the country, that there was such a focus on artisans and craftsmanship and people devoting their time and their talents to making even the smallest things beautiful and meaningful. And for me, that there was a certain nobility in that. I also appreciated the fact that these people were elevated in that they were referred to as maestri. They were, called masters, and that they had an elevated place in their society, and that their community really valued what they were doing and what they were contributing to their community. And could you go to the next one? Thanks. And this was particularly important to me because at that time, and times are changing somewhat now, but there was really a lack of representation in the jewelry industry in terms of people of color. So that at that time, there really wasn't any model for me to look to. There wasn't any designers that I could kind of model myself after, or that I could hope to kind of follow in their paths. So it was, I think at that time, particularly challenging because not only did I not have a background in jewelry or know anyone that was in that field, but also I didn't see a person like that really existing in the world. At that time, there was one designer who designed Black cameos, and pretty much that was kind of the extent of Black jewelry designers. And there were really no fine jewelry designers that were being given any time in media or press. So it was very difficult again to find them, to connect with them, and to in any way connect with them. But I think that in itself might have been a gift, because instead of seeing that as a challenge, I kind of felt that it was freeing, that I could, instead of following a model that already existed, I could just create my own. Yep. And so after graduation, when all of my friends were moving on to Wall Street or to their enviable consulting positions, I moved back home to my parents' home, which was, FYI, not cool at the time, and spent all of my time creating things, creating pieces of jewelry in my childhood bedroom. This went on for some time, and at some point my mom said, Dorian, I really think that you'd sell much more if you actually left the house. And I saw that as being a fair commentary. So I went out and I started knocking on doors and did this for about 2 or 3 weeks, and discovered that was just not really the way to scale my business. While I had some success in selling to additional stores, it was not something that was in any way scalable. So I instead I signed up to do a trade show in New York, and at the first trade show that I participated in, 2 things happened, which are again turning points for my business. One is that Neiman Marcus picked up the line and purchased all of the entire collection for all of its stores. And the other thing that happened is that Essence used a pair of my earrings on its cover. And with these 2 things happening, I had the outside validation that I needed for a lot of stores to then begin purchasing my line and to begin working with me. Because not only was I someone that stores might not have previously thought would be selling the type of jewelry that I was, but I was also fairly young, didn't have any connections. So that outside validation really meant a lot. And from those two events happening, I also began selling to other department stores like Barney's, Bergdorf Goodman, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Bloomingdale's as well. So as the company expanded, I also began designing other collections that were that used Venetian glass as their base. And I designed lighting and also housewares and home decor. I designed a line of housewares for Mackenzie Childs. And the chandeliers that I designed, one of which in the lower right-hand corner, it was part of a group that was on a multi-year museum and gallery exhibition that toured the United States with the work of a fiber artist, Zenobia Bailey. And then the large kind of round ball chandelier, the palace chandelier, is one of a licensed collection that I designed for a larger lighting company that was based on a bracelet that I had made. But again, with this collection, and as my collections expanded, there was always just sort of this connection to Venice and that whole community and that love of craft that I first discovered there. And my company continued to grow until the recession. I'm going to show the next slide. And we weathered the recession, but through that process, I also began to kind of question if what I was doing was enough, if making pretty things was enough in this world. And at that point, I moved to Oakland. I found a vibrant African-American community, and I started teaching low-income women how to start their own businesses. And then I also started teaching various business owners how to improve their businesses. And as part of that, I founded something called Uplift, which was an organization that transformed unused storefronts in downtown Oakland and activated them with the work of talented artists and designers that I had met in Oakland, and just thought that they needed sort of a larger platform to be seen on. And from that exercise and that activity, I decided, and I also, for that work and other work that I was doing in community, I actually received the Madame C.J. Walker Entrepreneur Award from 100 Black women in recognition of my work. And I decided to formally relaunch my business at that time. And when I relaunched, I started with my signature piece, which is a ring that is pictured here in the lower right-hand corner. It's one that I hand carve, and it features coral. And for me, coral it's like almost like a physical manifestation of women and all that we do and how essential we are, and also represents in some way how we're often overlooked. And this particular piece is one of my favorites because I designed it, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And with its carved branches that kind of spread across your fingers, it is absolutely one of those things that no matter where you wear it or when you wear it, that someone will come up to you and will comment on it. And I love the fact that it is just so big and so bold and so unapologetic, and then it takes up space in ways that sometimes we as women struggle to. So. And with my return to making jewelry, I changed my business model from one that was selling to mainly retailers, just one that was selling instead direct to consumer, and then also working with strategic partners. But I didn't change my love of color and using textures in my work. And I think that what people seek out in my work is the interesting color combinations that kind of draw your eye, the ways in which you can, I don't want to say I study color, but what I enjoy about playing with color is the way that it can, again, just kind of bring attention to different areas and can change feelings and perceptions as well. And then it also creates these interesting kind of rhythms. And when I returned, another component of returning to the world of jewelry was really wanting to be able to open up that world to access, and access in ways in which I felt excluded previously. So for us, being able to really be part of the design process is important. All of our pieces can be customized because they're all handmade, and the majority of the pieces actually are made here in our studio or in Oakland. And so you can really adjust the pieces, customize the pieces to what you'd like them to be, what looks best on you, and we can also help you figure that out if you don't know that. And I also wanted to find a way that we could formally invite people into that design process. And part of that is by creating initial pendants that really represent the full spectrum of the person, as opposed to just one letter kind of thing. Because I think that, historically, jewelry has been used, and the only purpose it really serves is to define and reveal the wearer and who they are. After the murder of George Floyd, I was struggling with various emotions and just wanted to find a way to really mark that moment and carry it forward, but carry it forward in a way that was, I don't want to say positive, but that just really had still had meaning, and then also opened up conversations, which for me is also really important, and I think another integral purpose that jewelry serves. So I designed the Black Lives Matter cuff, which features this large enameled butterfly, and the words Black Lives Matter are inscribed in a ribbon that kind of wraps around one of the wings of the butterfly. And the reason that I chose a butterfly was, for me, butterflies don't represent transformation as much as they do this fierce belief in who you are, even when you don't get that affirmation from any aspect of society. But for you to be able to kind of continue and to live your life to your best ability without having that reinforcing feedback, and then to emerge as you are, I think is just such a beautiful and wonderful thing. And as a companion piece to this Black Lives Matter cuff, I also designed a I Vote cuff, which also used butterflies in its theme as well. And this cuff has the words I vote cut out of it so that it reveals the wearer's skin. And again, it gives messages that, again, invite conversation. And the bracelet at the bottom of those two photos is what we call the always bracelet. So it's engraved with the word always, which serves as a kind of a signifier or underliner that you can pair with either of these pieces. And the Hope Ring was a collection that I did to bring those ideas forward in a way that felt like it was moving beyond that moment. And I think that the only way to really move forward is to move forward in hope and with hope. And in this collection, the word hope is inscribed in the outside of the ring shank, so that when you wear it, you can still feel that that word against your skin, or those string of words against your skin. And the Hope rings, like the two other collections, the proceeds for those collections were donated to social impact causes, because I thought that that was also important to be able to support those through the sale of my work, and then also through the people wearing them and having those conversations. And the Love and Hope collection is one that Heath Collection, that's based, a company, it's based in San Francisco and actually in the Bay Area, came up with, and they had approached me to do a collection in conjunction with this Love and Hope collection that they had come up with, that used that kind of the gradient yellow glazed pottery. And so for this collection and this collaboration, I came up with an enameling technique that would mirror their glazes, to really again, I wanted to be able to magnify those feelings that they were sharing, and be able to do it in a way that was uplifting and meaningful. And in this picture also, I'm showing one of the paintings that I did from a solo exhibition that I had at Thelma Harris Art Gallery in Oakland, that focused on a project I called the Marriage Project, which was an exploration of marriage through the study of protea, which is a flower that grows naturally here, and also is native to South Africa, the cradle of mankind, where mankind began. And the last collection I'm sharing with you today is Quality to Equality. And recently I was selected as one of 6 designers nationwide to be a part of the Emerging Designers Diamond Initiative, which is kind of interesting after 30 years in the business. Being deemed emerging is kind of an interesting concept. But it was something that came out of, again, this desire for companies to be more inclusive. And there was also, I think, a realization in the diamond industry that they really had to widen their scope, because if the world of jewelry is exclusive in some ways, fine jewelry, when you get to the level of using diamonds in your work, it's very, very kind of cloistered. And if you don't have a connection to a diamantaire, a person who sells diamonds, then you're basically just shut out of the industry. But if you do have that connection, or someone introduces you, then you can have literally $100,000 worth of credit of diamonds on a handshake, or without even lacking that as well. So with this collection, Quality to Equality, I really wanted to explore the idea of, kind of putting, I think that what historically African Americans have excelled at, and we're so wonderful at, is being able to take little bits of nothing and turn them into something that's absolutely amazing and wonderful. I mean, I think it happens in not only fashion, but also in food, also in music, in art, and while that's wonderful, I was also just kind of imagining a time when we're not offered bits of things that are discarded, but actually starting from a place of quality, and what that means and what that looks like. And for this collection, which is again based on experiences I've had as an African American and my perspective, like one of the pieces that I'm showing now is the hoops that are on the bottom of this slide, and the idea behind them is to really have almost like a call and response kind of a rhythm to them. So they're not mirrors of each other, but instead they interact almost like they do in church or in, you know, the idea that the polyrhythms kind of are something that really transport and engage you. And the other thing that I really concentrated on was using fancy diamonds in conjunction. And fancy diamonds or fancy cuts are essentially any cut that is not a perfectly round stone. And in doing so, I realized that a lot of people, that's a very unusual approach to take, because each shape of diamond comes from a different type of diamond tear. And while the diamonds are calibrated, each diamond is cut so that it maximizes its weight, which is part of its value, and also to maximize its sparkle. So to try to match up different shapes and different sizes after pulling them together from various diamond tears is it's a process in and of itself. But through this process, I think you're able to come up with, or I'm hoping that I came up with, compositions that reveal themselves over time, that each and every time you look at them, you can see a different detail or a different kind of aspect of them that brings you comfort or brings you joy. And I think that also through having these diamonds in, having them bringing in different shapes, different sizes, that through contrast, you can really appreciate each diamond for what it brings to the table and for what its individual and unique personality. And I think that honestly, that's all anyone really, really wants. So, yeah. So thank you so much, Rami, and also the Yale Alumni Association for having me, and for you also for joining me on this. And I, as my thank you to you, I would like to extend a discount of 20% off for the month of February, Black History Month, with code YAA Guest 20 as my thank you and my note of appreciation. And I would love to open up the floor to questions if there are any, and just wanted to say again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dorian. That was amazing, and I learned so much every time I talk to you about your philosophy and design, and even how jewelry is made, which I think is incredibly fascinating. And so I wanted to open it up to questions. And you are welcome to put a question into the chat. If you don't want to talk directly, you can put your virtual or actual hand up. We'll try to do that in order. And then we will also send out to everyone who participated a follow-up email with the recording, and you'll have that code that Dorian mentioned as well. So actually, Dorian, since while people are gathering their thoughts, wanted to actually start off with a question that was, I think, particularly inspired by seeing all the different types of jewelry and crafting that you've done, and the incredible design, the glass work. So I'd love to, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you learned the different jewelry design and crafting skills over time. Maybe just if you could share a couple anecdotes, I think that would be really interesting for people.
Oh, sorry, and sorry, I was listening to you, and I was also seeing questions come up, so my attention was a little bit divided. So I'm sorry. Could you please repeat that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I thought if you could tell everyone a little bit about how you learned the many different crafting skills. You don't have to cover all of them, but to go from complex Venetian glass to carving pieces that become silver to working with diamonds. I think that would be very interesting for people. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so it's funny. So I started actually, when I was in high school, I started taking classes at Tyler School of Art, and they offered programs on the weekends, so you could learn the craft of jewelry making and soldering and those sort of things. And then when I was in Italy, when I studied in Italy, I studied at a place called Fuji Studios, and again learned more about casting and about inlay as well, and did also some kind of carving there as well, wax carving, which is something I still kind of come back to now, because for me, I just think that there's something about hand craftsmanship and knowing that something is handcrafted and having that close to your skin, that's just a very kind of a nice and intimate experience. And then so just I like the idea of hand carving pieces. I also do work with CAD, which is, again, architecture was a great background for that, because it uses a lot of the same, the same techniques. And then the enameling is something that I kind of have been self-taught with, but I think that it still draws on the same kind of techniques as painting as well. And right now, I think that there are just so many resources out there for whatever it is that you want to do. With the when I was brought into the diamond program, then there was also additional training that we did on understanding the grading of diamonds, the history of diamonds, and there was courses that we took on that as well. So that was, again, just another layer. And I love it that you can just continue to learn various aspects, and that there's always something new on the horizon that can help to move your designs forward in some way, shape, or form.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to Meng Li, would you like to share your questions? I'm also happy to read them out loud, but I prefer to have everyone speak if you're feeling up to it. Okay, great. I guess I'm going to have to read your question out loud. For some reason, your audio is not coming through. So Meng asked, can you share your growing up experiences? What inspired you to work in the creative field?
Yeah, I think, well, it's funny. I'm an only child, and growing up, I think my parents wanted to expose me to everything under the sun. And a lot of those things did not work at all. But it felt like I had some traction when it came to anything creative. So from an early age, I was painting or going to ceramics classes, or those sort of things, just as far back as I can remember. And I think that it's interesting also. I think that while my parents were very much excited about me having creative pursuits, I think that as members of the upper middle class, that they really, at that point, were I think it's challenging for African American parents to have kids go into, at least at that point, I think it was more so, to go into creative fields. And again, I kind of shared that there weren't really models, and there weren't really paths that were heralded, or that were shown, or that were, so that they could kind of understand what that meant or what that looked like. So that was kind of an interesting challenge.
Actually, a follow-up question also from Meng, which I think is a great one. What advice do you have for young children and students who are interested in art and creative fields, in terms of sort of how to start thinking about entering the field?
I think the most important thing, or the best thing that you could probably do, is to work for someone who's in that field. Because I think that it's just invaluable to gain experience and access in working for another company, and just understanding how it works. And also just being able to have the luxury of, if you make a mistake, saying, I'm sorry, and then moving on with that, as opposed to trying to figure out all that out yourself, because it's just not necessary.
Thank you. Shiza, do you want to ask your question? I know you're in transit, and I'm happy to read it for you, but we'd love to have you if you're up for it.
Yeah, I stopped driving.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Although somehow my phone thinks I'm in safe driving mode, which I guess is a good thing. Dorian, what I wanted to ask you about is if you could talk a little bit about the balance between the business side and the creative side. And have you had tension between what you want to do and what sells, or is it always sort of worked out? Has it been aligned, the two sides, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think there's just always, it's just both sides are kind of fighting it out. And I think it's just one of those things that you just really have to, if you're going into any creative business, part of your time necessarily is going to have to be devoted to the other side of things. I mean, you have to be able to balance your books. You've got to be able to read the data. You've got to be able to figure out what makes business sense at the same time, while trying to do things that you find interesting and creative and fulfilling. So that's always a challenge. And the thing is, it's funny because sometimes what people react best to are things that are so personal and that you're a little bit hesitant about putting out there. But that still also has to be supported by good business decisions as well.
Roland, I see you have a question in the chat. Would you like to ask that? Let's see. Okay, Roland, please jump in. I'll start. So Roland asked if you could further describe how your architectural education influences your design process and your approach.
Well, I think that it's, again, like the way in which I design is I usually start with the stones themselves, because I think that if you start at least for me, if I start any other way, I can design things that are great. But if I can't make those, if I can't really bring those into, make them a reality, then it's almost an exercise in futility. So I start with the stones themselves, and then I start playing with color. And then I also try to see how they look on and understand how they work with people's skin tones, with their eye color, with hair, with how they elongate the fingers, or draw attention to a wrist. So all of those things kind of come into play, and that really comes out of the study of architecture, where you're thinking about things in relation from one to another, and also just trying to understand in a real way how these pieces that you are making not only work with that person, but also exemplify something about that person's personality. So it's a little bit of, and again, when you design a building or something, you are kind of having to project into the future about what those uses are going to be, and how people are going to experience this space, how people are going to feel, what people are going to take away from that. And then also you're thinking about building something that in essence has a pretty long timeline. I mean, the jewelry that I make is not, I think it maybe touches on trends, but it's not faddish, because it's meant to be something that you can kind of come back to and enjoy 15 years, 20 years later, that you can give to your children or pass down, that there's an idea of I guess groundedness there, or stability there, that it's something that is meaningful and means to kind of to travel with you, to go that distance with you. So that's, I think, also the ways in which architecture is kind of studying architecture has influenced my designs.
Julia has a question. Can someone request a commission piece? So,
Definitely. So we work with customer stones. We do a lot of engagement rings as well. So, and as much or as little as you want to be involved in the process, we can kind of work around that. But I mean, my intention is really, like, in everything I design, is to be able to come up with something that brings someone joy and that has meaning for them. And I realize that I don't have all the answers for that. And that in general, people know what makes them happy. They know what things are meaningful to them that they want to mark and commemorate. And so, yeah, we always do commissions, and those are some of the most fun. I just love the process of learning more about the person that I'm doing the commission with as the process goes on, because it is just such an interesting one to kind of come up with something that really shares that person's story.
are there other questions in the audience? Oh, actually, Amy has one. Amy, please jump in.
So let's see. Oh, okay. So I just read Amy's question quickly, unless I don't know if Amy wants to ask herself, but so Amy's question was about what things I am working on now. So there are a couple of things that I'm very excited about now that are on the horizon. One is a collection that's based, we're calling it the Harriet Collection. So it's based on Harriet Tubman, and I think everybody knows the story of Harriet Tubman. What interests me most about her story is not that all the absolutely incredible things that she did and her strength and in leading so many slaves to enslave people to freedom, but also realizing that with absolutely no education, that she knew how to use a combination, I think, of 140 different herbs to basically keep people safe, to keep people well, to silence babies who are crying, like all these things that you don't think about when you're talking about leading hundreds of people, thousands of people to a safe space over many, many miles. So, and for me, it was just such an example of how I think, well, we as women do so much, and then there's a whole layer of things that you don't even think about that are just so incredible that we're doing every day, and just really celebrating that, and just making sure that we kind of keep that front and center, because I think that that's often, so again, it's just something that we take for granted, or that we overlook. And another project that I'm working on that I'm really excited about is that I've recently expanded our studio to the space next door to us as well. And we're going to be turning that into a community space for entrepreneurs, kind of similar, I guess, to WeWork, but more for creative entrepreneurs, so that you have a place that is low cost, where you can show your work. If you wanted to have a pop-up for your jewelry collection, or your that you were doing some skincare line, or you wanted to do a collaboration with someone, or you came out with a book, or you just wanted to spend some time in community with other creatives and have that those kind of interesting moments of collaboration that those occur. But for me, it really is important to be able to have a space that you can rent at a low rate, that enables you to get in front of your target audience, where you're not dependent upon a store to have a pop-up for you, or to have an exhibition for you, but that you can really control that, and that you can really ramp up your business in that way. So that's another something else that I'm excited about. And then the third thing that is in the works is a project called Give Her Her Flowers that I'm working on. And that title is based on a song by, I think his name is James Cleveland, who wrote this song in 1965. But he was a pastor at Aretha Franklin's church and helped her kind of, when she was 9, I guess, get out in front of the congregation and sing. But the project is really about honoring African-American women who are doing incredible things to move the culture and the community forward in ways that are just absolutely, incredible. And for this project, I'm designing individual one-of-a-kind necklaces that are made of these kind of brass enameled flowers that also are accented with semi-precious stones and that each contain a single diamond. And I will be giving these to 12 women throughout the United States and then gathering them together and in a kind of a ceremony to honor them for the work that they're doing, because I think that we need to hear more stories about people who are doing incredible things, like a woman who she worked at Goldman Sachs for a while. She had some health issues. She had to step back from that. And from that experience, she started a clinical trial to get more African Americans into clinical trials so that we can all benefit from the vast, just from everyone's experiences and histories, and is pairing that also with luxury brands as well, because it's her belief that health and wellness kind of almost is a luxury, and that being able to take care of yourself is also a part of the luxury space. And then also building on that with creating farms so that people can also have fresh food as well. So just things like that, I just think are just so inspiring that are out there. And I just want more people to know about all that's going on and all these positive things that are going on, and just being able to elevate these women so that other women can see them and be inspired by them as well.
Those are amazing projects, Dorian. I'm curious with the last one. How are you finding the women, right? How did you learn about this? Is it just sort of going through the news, or I'd love to hear more stories.
Yeah, so I'm in the beginning phases of this, but some of it's going through the news. Some of it's just women. I was inspired by these women to I guess that they're the ones that drove the project anyway. So meeting these extraordinary women has kind of set this idea in motion. But I'm also going to be working with people who work at business accelerators, because I think that they also have a kind of a link to people who are doing things that are transformative in our community. So also I want to partner with them as well, so that again, I can really amplify what they're doing and share what they're doing with a wider audience.
That's great.
Dorian, it's Steve Bloom. Can I pop in? I haven't been able to use chat because I've been driving.
Please do.
No, thank you. First of all, thank you for an incredibly informative 54 miles. And secondly, listening to you, particularly during parts of your story where you've made transformations either into new product categories or sort of new parts of your career, the parts that are clear are, courage and creativity and risk taking. I mean, those are clearly there, and that's part of being a great entrepreneur. But I'm also struck by, there must be a fair amount of empathy that helps you be a success, because jewelry, is such a personal, such human, such a subjective thing, even more than other aspects of architecture. Am I right in thinking that, empathy is something, if you can kind of clear your mind and put yourself inside the soul of somebody else, that helps you do a better job?
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely right, and thank you for that. It's funny. I mean, I always think of it as connection, and what drives me is finding new ways of connection, because I think it's important that we all feel connected, because otherwise, when people feel disconnected, that's when we have breakdowns in society. So for me, connection is everything, but I think that empathy has to be a part of that too. And I think that that's also, it's funny because I think that that also comes back to Yale once again, and the idea of having curiosity be so prized, and that's also just, you know, again, part of the learning process is understanding more about other people. And the way to do that is to have empathy, you know, that it's.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I have one more for you, Dorian. Okay. So I know that you love to travel, right? You talked about Italy, and I know that you've explored other places and cultures. I'd love to hear a little more about how those experiences, you know, of a different kind influence your work. For those of you, if you go to Dorian's website, there's a section called Dorian's Finds, which I find eternally fascinating because she's sourced all these incredible things from all over the world. So Dorian, if you could talk a little bit more about all of that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I think, well, the finds came out of just wanting to be able to bring up a part of some experience that I've found interesting or exciting and sharing that with more people. And the thing is, I mean, I love the idea of hand craftsmanship in any way, shape, or form. And I also like the idea of being able to, wherever I see that, you know, honoring that and sharing that. And I think that for me, the whole idea of bringing back these pieces is also just a way of kind of keeping connected with that culture that I'm seeing, and that for me, all of these pieces have meaning because they represent an experience and a place and a time. And I think that even if you haven't gone there, it feels like in some way, shape, or form that you're connected to that place. And then it also can serve as an aspiration to people as well. And I also like sharing stories. So in bringing back those pieces, there's always a story that's involved. There's always you know, meaning or something that connects with me too. And again, it's about that. I think if you share enough stories, then there's got to be something that people connect to and that they engage with and that they understand, that they are inspired by, and that it just promotes greater understanding.
That's great. Thank you. I think, we have one more question. Maria Ann asked, can you please share, the discount code? And she said, thanks for a beautiful presentation. So we're actually, we can, Dorian, you can definitely share the code, and then we will send an email out after. You will be able to access the recording as well. So,
yep. So the code is YAA guest 20 for a 20% discount throughout the rest of the month. And that's at my website, which is dorianwebb.com.
Great. Thank you again for sharing your story and your journey and your incredible talents and heart and soul and intellect. And this was a pleasure. As you know, I'm a fan, and the pieces are even more meaningful to me already. They're also my favorites. So I really enjoyed hearing how you've evolved your business and also how you're giving back in so many different ways to many different communities. So thank you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me here, Raimi. I just so enjoyed it, and just really appreciated the opportunity to share my story and my perspective and to reconnect with everyone again.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and yes, a great weekend soon.